Hello and welcome to this slightly less interesting episode from Range Woodworking, where today we deal with a problem. Now, it might be less interesting, but it is important. The problem I have is that I put all my equipment into storage for about 12 months, didn't really prepare them for that beforehand, and I've developed a lot of surface rust that needs treating. Now I have two large cast iron tools. I have the table saw and my jointer. The first half of this video, I'll be preparing the table saw and getting it really dialed in. And the second half, I'll be treating the jointer.
The first thing I want to do on the table saw is to get rid of this surface rust and these imperfections, and hopefully the cast iron isn't in too bad shape. The rust really isn't too bad and shouldn't stop me using the saw, but as you can see, it will likely stain or mark anything I send through it. And truth be told, I really can't remember when I last tuned it up. To get started, I removed the plate and the blade. The plate is anodized aluminium, so it isn't rusty, but it will scratch and mark as I work on the top, and the blade will get its own attention later. Always a good idea to unplug. Now to treat the top, I give it all a liberal drenching with just basic WD-40 and really let it soak in for 20 minutes. I then take a square of maroon Scotch-Brite pad and an old but powerful sander and work over the whole surface, making sure not to attach the vacuum. You really don't want to put this all through your sander and vacuum hose. Once that's done, I wipe away everything with a paper towel and you can already see the improvement. Realistically, you could stop there if you wanted, it's not going to stain anything anymore. But I like to add some protection for the top that also reduces friction. You could use a basic paste wax, but I use this Silver Glite. It's a dry lubricant that prevents rust and helps pieces slide freely across the surface without leaving any residue. It's just applied with a cloth and the excess is wiped away.
Now, a lot of people think that their blade is dull or not sharp anymore once they've used it for a while and they go off and get a new one. But the reality is it's likely just to build up pitch. These are two blades that I use a fair bit and they're certainly starting to make a lot of smoke when I use them. But what you can actually see is a lot of build-up on the teeth, which reduces the sharpness and it creates a lot of extra friction which starts burning your timber when you cut it. You can see the same on this fine finish blade, that there's a huge build-up on all of these teeth across the tops and the sides. And I can just tell already this was probably making a lot of smoke and certainly not much in the way of fine finish.
So what I do is take some scrap plastic to protect my workbench and then this CMT blade and bit cleaner that I spray on the teeth. There are loads of other blade cleaners out there, but I like this one. I'll link it below. Once that's had a good soak, I gently hit all the teeth with some more maroon Scotch-Brite and the pitch comes away really easily. Once this side of the teeth are nice and shiny, I carefully flip the blade over and these teeth are ready to go. I'll also hit the faces of the teeth until I'm satisfied that everything is pitch free. Once all finished, I'll reinstall the blade and faceplate and we're on to tuning.
Alright, our surface is clean and waxed. Our blade is clean and sharp. Now's a great time to take a trusted square and just check that your blade is square to the table, which mine isn't.
I find using a light behind the blade is a really effective way to help identify any tilt in the blade that needs attention.
Okay, our top is rust-free and waxed and prepared. Our blade is clean and sharp. and it's now square to the table. The last thing I want to check is that in transport, the table itself hasn't shifted relative to the blade. So we'll check the miter slots are still parallel with the blade.
And to do that, I'll use this. It's a mag switch dial indicator that runs along the miter slot and will show any run out in the blade. I rest it into the miter slot against one end of the blade and it'll give a reading. And as I move along the blade, it will show any deviation from parallel. In this case, the back end of the blade here reads negative 0.03 and the front end reads negative 0.01.
So from the back of the blade to the front of the blade, there is a deviation of 0.02 millimeters. Knowing my woodworking, that is more than accurate enough for me to be happy. I'll put the conversion into thousandths of an inch down on the bottom somewhere. And last but not least, I'm going to check that the fence is still parallel to the miter slots. So using the same dial indicator, I'll take a measurement and I'll run it up the slot along the fence. And it looks like in the length of the fence, it kicks out ever so slightly by 0.3 millimeters. I want that to happen to reduce any chance of kickback. I don't want the fence to be squeezing the workpiece into the blade, so I'm pretty happy with that as well. And that's it for the table saw. All that's left to do is run a piece through and make sure we're happy. So the last step is to make sure that we've got two nice parallel faces after those cuts. You could use calipers and just measure and measure.
If you don't have calipers, I tend to just use a combination square and the fence. I just push it against the fence to set it, do the same at the other end, and there's no difference here, so we're all good.
Onto the jointer. Okay, so the table saw is all finished and it's time to turn my attention to the jointer. Now, it starts the same with treating the rust. Give it a liberal coating with WD-40, scrub it with a maroon Scotch-Brite pad, and cover it with a lubricant. In my case, I used the Silver Glide again. Now, our next step is to make sure that the beds of the jointer are on the same plane as the cutter head. And to check the beds are coplanar, I'm just going to use a steel rule and a piece of timber with a notch cut out of it. So I simply take my slotted bit of timber and pop the ruler in there and balance it to line up with just the tooth at the end here, or one end from the end in this case. And my aim is to just see how well it catches that ruler. It just barely touches it. I'll then bring it over to the other side. Do the same again, and again we're just barely touching it. It's not lifting the ruler at all, just pushing it along with just the slightest catch. Okay, so I'm happy that the outfeed bed is on the right plane. Of course, if I was unhappy, just like setting it up, I would undo my adjustment grub screws here and on the back, and then turn these cams using a hammer and a punch until I fine-tune it to just how I like it. Unfortunately, whilst I'm still down here, it's time to check that the in-feed table is on the same plane as the out-feed table. And to do that, we'll be using some feeler gauges.
So I take the steel rule and make sure it's flush along the near side of the outfeed table and measure this gap on the infeed table. In this case, this side reads 0.65 millimeters or 0.026 inches. Then I'll do the same on the far side, which is ever so slightly greater. So there is a 0.02 millimeter difference across from here to here.
Okay, so I'm happy that my in-feed table is good, my out-feed table is good. So all that's left is the one thing I should probably do every time I use it, and that's setting up the fence to make sure it's square with my tables.
So I'll lock the fence down in a position so that it's tight and there's no lateral movement. I'll loosen the angle of the fence, take my square and gently dial it in using a light to make sure everything is perfect on both tables before tightening it in position. Just make sure you check in multiple places. Keeping things safe, I'll reattach the guard and check it springs back appropriately before wrestling the whole jointer back into position and sending a test piece through. The cutter heads still face this oak like butter, and as hard as it is to capture on camera, this angle is perfectly square.
Well, there you have it. Table saw all tuned and set up, jointer all tuned and set up. It's not very exciting, it's not very much fun, but it does help keep everything a lot more accurate, and you should probably do it on a somewhat regular basis. I'm not going to lecture you because it's no fun and it's boring, that's not what you're here for, but now I can at least get started on some more exciting projects. So until next time, take it easy.